So in this video, I'm going to talk about redoing the bottom of my drift boat. I went with Wetlander out of the East Coast. Scott over there. If you have any questions, he's readily available during regular business hours on the East Coast. It's a two-part. So there's a primer that goes on, which is a two-part, and the top coat that goes over the primer, which is a two-part. I did it in layers. So the primer, I did about 4 or 5 coats. And the top coat, same thing, same process, about 4 or 5 coats. I did it with a roller. You'll see that, a lot of time lapse in this upcoming video. You'll see how I removed all the old Gluvit. I don't know how these guys put it on, but it looked like a kindergarten project. My wife's a kindergarten teacher, and I've seen some of the projects. There must have not have been any internet in those days, because it looks like they just poured it right out of the can, right onto the surface here. And you'll see where it just dripped down the side, down the bottom of the boat. And so it was really thick in some spots, really thin in others. You'll see where bare metal came through, and that was the main reason for redoing the bottom, because I could see where it had been chipped away and water was getting trapped underneath and causing corrosion. So that was the main reason for redoing the bottom. But if you're thinking about doing a drift boat bottom, or you have done one and you like this video, don't forget, give me that thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button right down there. Tight lines, see you on the water. So here you can see the drips I was talking about, and it's all over the whole bottom of the boat. The thickness was just so inconsistent, and you could see the different thicknesses. You could see the different shading because it was becoming separated underneath. That's corrosion. You could see bare metal coming through. Water's getting trapped underneath and causing the pitting and corrosion. And some of it was easy enough to pick off by hand. I imagine I was probably losing some chunks every time I hit rocks on the river. And so this project was really long overdue. And you can see some of the corrosion right there. Some of this just, there we go, just chunked right off. And so the first method I tried pulling this off was hammer and chisel. And I would heat it up with my Searsall torch. It worked okay, but of course my methods changed as I went along. Tried doing a grinder. That was a big mistake. Caused so much dust in the garage and smoke. That stuff is just nasty to inhale. And so I went back to the hammer and chisel. Eventually I went with just the torch without the Searsall and the air scraper from Harbor Freight, and I'll show you, you'll see a picture of it coming up here. But that proved to work pretty well. I put these propane heaters underneath the boat, and there's the air scraper from Harbor Freight. Amazon's got them too, and so that worked the best. And you could see how much material as I was able to remove up with this method. A lot easier. The bottom of the boat got pretty warm. And you can see me going underneath the boat and moving the heater around to the spot that I was working. I had it probably about 6-8 inches away from the bottom of the boat. There was a couple areas that I couldn't put the heater from underneath because of the compartment. You'll see that near the back of the boat. I had to use more of the torch on the top. But heating up the Gluvit was the main goal. Without heating up the Gluvit, it's not going to come off. It's not going to be your friend. So that's the only way to really remove the old Gluvit. You have to heat it up. Otherwise the chipping or sanding is going to be brutal. And so here it is real time. So this is pretty much what it looks like in real time. Got the heat pretty much. Probably about right there. Hopefully I'll be able to get all this This is just some of the residue that was on the bottom. The thick stuff came up pretty easy when it's heated now, and then I had some of this residue left on the bottom, so I'm having to go back over it. Kind of like cutting hair. And so yeah, it did came off in layers, because whoever put on this Gluvit, it was layered on. This is like one of the bottom layers, and it was pretty thin. Some of it came off pretty easy, some of it was pretty tough depending on how they prepped the surface. You could see in some areas where they grinded or sanded, there was just different grits all over the bottom of the boat. Some of the boat was like done with 100 grit. Some of parts of the boat weren't even done at all. And so sometimes it all came off in one scraping. Sometimes it would come off in 2 or 3 scrapings. It would be a top layer, then the second layer, and then the layer underneath that. Here you can see it all just came up at once. And so, but right here, there was really no sanding, or, you know, they didn't prep the surface underneath. So, I mean, it was on, it didn't come off in those areas, and some of the areas you did, you can see some of the pitting. And here, there's the compartment underneath, where the motor hangs on the back of the boat. There's a compartment in the drift boat. Mine's the only drift boat I've seen with this compartment. It's not open, and so I had to use the torch a lot on the top. But it just goes to show, here I am grinding, and the surface, getting it ready to prep, and here I'm going to talk about the tools. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools I use. My orbital DA, that's a 60 grit. This one doesn't have the holes underneath it for the exhaust, so that made a lot of dust. This is just a pneumatic drill. I have a wire brush on there. I use that a little bit. Helped somewhat. This is the air scraper from Harbor Freight. I think that was 40 bucks. That was probably one of the best tools I used. With this blade, it comes with different blades. That's like about a 1-inch blade, maybe a little bit longer. My die grinder, just a little pad on here. I used that for some of the tight areas. That worked pretty well. And of course, a pick and a brush. You know, those were the final steps, and a white light, a bright white light, you know, that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this grinder. It's not a variable speed, it's just on off. I think it was 40 bucks. I think it's well worth the money, actually. It's really done a good job. But this disc that I put on here, this is the grinding wheel that originally comes on. And you could try grinding off Gluvit. I wouldn't recommend it because it just creates so much dust. And you'd have to wear a respirator. Even if you're outside, it's just a real mess. I tried using this disc, even though it's rated, this one's 60. This removed a lot of metal, and it was just too aggressive for what my needs were that I thought I wanted to do. This is what's on here now. It's a Diablo grinder sander conversion kit. And so here I am taping and getting ready to put on the primer. It's a 2 parts. This is, I'm going to show you just putting on the initial coats. And so I think all in all is about 4 or 5 coats. And it took about 20 to 30 minutes in between coats to let it dry. The instructions are pretty clear about this. You know, as long as you run your fingers over it, and you'll be able to tell. If your fingers stick to it, then you gotta wait a few more minutes. And it worked pretty well. So, and then the top coat went on pretty much the same way. So this is what it looks like with the tape pulled off. All in all, I think it worked out pretty good. First time doing this, learned a lot, and I would do it again. We'll see what, you can see some of the battle wounds on the bottom of this boat. I would do this again with the Wetlander. I've never used coated or Gluvit. I just know that taking the old Gluvit off and what it looked like, it was, that was in pretty bad shape. But we'll see how this thing performs on the water. That'll be hopefully in a few weeks here. And we'll get that video out to you guys, hopefully with a fish or two as well. But if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Remember, if you learned something, give me that thumbs up. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button right down there. Tight lines, see you on the water.